Hello and welcome to this M&S Archive online talk celebrating Black history at M&S, Stories from the Archive. My name is Catherine and I'm part of the M&S Archive team in Leeds. We collect, share and celebrate Marks & Spencer's unique heritage. This is a pre-recorded talk, but you're welcome to contact the archive with questions about this or any other aspect of M&S heritage at any time. Our founder, Michael Marks, was a young immigrant when he set up his first market stall in Leeds in 1884, having arrived from what is now Belarus with little money, few contacts, and speaking little English. He began with one market stall and opened a further 9 market stalls in other northern towns over the next 10 years. Then, in 1894, went into partnership with Skipton-born Thomas Spencer, creating Marks & Spencer. It was a really effective retail partnership and set the course for M&S over the coming decades, built on the idea of people from different backgrounds bringing different skills and strengths together for the benefit of customers. As the business expanded over the following decades, changing from a chain of penny bazaar stalls to a chain of department stores on high streets up and down the country, the commitment to finding and welcoming the widest possible range of talent is demonstrated repeatedly, particularly in terms of some of the Jewish colleagues who came from Europe in the 1930s to escape persecution and joined M&S and helped transform the business in key areas such as design, technology and employee welfare. So there are lots of examples in M&S's heritage of bringing together people from different backgrounds and putting everybody's talents into developing the business. Exploring Black history at M&S within the archive collection is really fascinating. The collection as a whole is about 72,000 items, and highlights are available in our free exhibition at the archive in Leeds. The archive collection covers a wide range of formats, from written documents to photographs to moving film and examples of vintage merchandise, for example clothing and homewares and packaging. The material dates from the 1880s right up to today. It's very much a living archive. There's constantly new material being added into the collection to ensure that researchers in the future will know about M&S in the 2020s. We focused on the parts of the collection most likely to have relevant material to be able to surface stories around Black history, and we're hoping this initial research will be a springboard for other researchers to come and delve further. Archive sources may contain outdated or offensive words, images or attitudes. M&S does not condone these. The archive team was already aware of some sensitive items within the archive collection containing racist language or imagery. For example, a 1930s book by a famous author that we sold, which featured racist language in the title. There are also some images of colleagues in blackface in amateur dramatic productions that featured in staff magazines. I haven't included any of that material today. I don't want to perpetuate the offence that those items cause. Archives, by their nature, are a record of an organisation's day-to-day activity, in our case the running of M&S as a business, rather than written for the benefit of posterity and the ease of future researchers, so it's not always easy to readily identify sources relating to Black history. Within the archive collection or published sources about M&S, there is nothing to suggest that M&S ever had a colour bar, that is, a policy restricting employment on the grounds of race, either as part of official company policy or as part of unofficial local practice. I thought it might be helpful to provide some wider context to some of the material from the M&S collection. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any relevant material earlier than the 1950s, so the 50s to 60s period is what we're mainly focusing on today. But in terms of what was happening in wider context, In 1948, the British Nationality Act gave all Commonwealth subjects the right to live and work in Britain without restrictions, and a few months later, the Empire Windrush arrived in London, marking the beginning of a new phase of migration. Moving into the 1960s, there are some high-profile cases or milestones, although this is by no means an exhaustive list. In 1963, the famous Bristol bus boycott saw community action against the refusal of the local bus company to employ black or Asian bus crews, and after 4 months of customer boycotting, the service and company changed its employment policy. 1964 saw the first black models on a high fashion catwalk in Paris, and in 1965 the Race Relations Act made racial discrimination unlawful in public places, followed the following year in 1966 by the creation of the Race Relations Board. 1966 also saw the ending of the colour bar at London railway stations, which had previously barred the employment of black and Asian employees at the stations. The first black model to appear on the cover of UK Vogue is Donielle Luna, an African-American model, shot by David Bailey for that UK cover, several years ahead of Beverly Ann Johnson appearing on the American edition of Vogue as the first black cover girl. 1968 saw the infamous Enoch Powell speech that became known as the Rivers of Blood speech, which was made a few months ahead of an extension to the Race Relations Act, which made racial discrimination in housing, employment and public services unlawful. Now, everything at M&S always starts with thinking about our customers, and this interesting 1960s documentary gives some insight here.
It is said that everyone shops at Marks & Spencer, but why does everyone shop there? They themselves declare that they are not specially interested in whom they sell to. Their chief interest lies in what they sell, every minute, every second.
What then is so remarkable about these shops that attracts people so much? They don't advertise, they don't own any factories. Their methods and aims haven't changed for 80 years, and their sales go up and up. Last year, in 1963, they amounted to £180 million.
You can't buy all kinds of goods here. If you're out shopping for plastic flowers, you shouldn't come here. Don't look for cosmetics or ballpoint pens or stationery or hats either.
You can't get your purchases delivered. You can't buy out sizes. You can't buy on credit. You don't get receipts unless you ask for one. And you can't try out or try on your purchases. Yet even so, the customers stream to these shops. What's the secret? Is it the prices? They're fairly low, but not strikingly low.
I just thought that was a really interesting piece of mid-1960s film footage, just giving an idea of who our customers were in that period from one of our typical London stores. Moving on to think about colleagues, and as you would expect in a business archive collection, we have material relating to employment policy and procedure, recruitment, training, development and reward of colleagues. I'm only using material from published sources, principally from staff magazines from different parts of our history. I'm not referring to anything from confidential HR records. This is the first written record anywhere in the archive collection specifically relating to employment policy and people from diverse backgrounds. It's from 1954 and it says, "Tolerance is a marked feature in our organisation. In selecting staff, for example, no prejudice is shown in regard to nationality, religion or marital status, provided the applicant is a person of integrity with the right qualifications for the job." Just to unpick that a little bit, Marital status is a reference to the common practice of that time for women to leave an organisation at the point of getting married. And in terms of the terminology, I think this reference to nationality and religion, which seems to be as close as the vocabulary of the period gets to acknowledging diversity in the wider sense. The later part of this wording is a little clumsy. We have, as a result, been able to draw on a very wide field and to absorb unusual personalities whose talent, though not immediately obvious, we have recognised and developed. So although the wording is very different to the language used in corporate policies today, this is the earliest policy wording showing M&S's commitment to recruiting very widely, without restrictions or barriers, and to support development and promotion within the business. It's often said that having a senior champion within an organisation is a key component to achieving significant change and development. And from the archive collection, it looks like Sir David Seath was one of those people. At M&S, he was the Director of Personnel, and in 1966, when the Race Relations Board was set up, he was chair of one of the 7 regional committees of the Race Relations Board, which gave him unique insight into race issues and particularly race employment issues. And he was very determined that M&S was going to do the right thing. In the late 1970s, it was at Sir David's lead that M&S began to support Full Employ, an initiative in London, Birmingham and Bristol to give worthwhile training to young people, mainly from disadvantaged backgrounds, mainly drawn from ethnic minorities. Our 1976 Conditions of Employment explicitly state that the sole criterion for selection or promotion is suitability for the job in question. M&S does not discriminate on the grounds of colour, race, religion or sex. It also goes on to state that advancement within the business is open to all, and most supervisory and management vacancies are filled by transfer or promotion. Then it encourages staff to speak to a manager if they do want to find out about the career prospects available to them. It's definitely true that supervisor roles or management roles tended to be filled through promotion within the company rather than external recruitment. In terms of what these policies meant in practice for M&S colleagues, the first reference I've been able to find which shows recruitment of black employees at our head office, which at the time was famously located in Baker Street in London, is a reference to 2 sisters in the mid-1960s. There's this really nice photo of the Mercer twins, and we find out that Jean is in the export department, and she'd been with the company since June 1964, and her twin sister Jeanette, who works in ladies' knitted dresses, joined in February of 1965. It's really nice to be able to put a name and a face to employees within the business and to know which part of the company they were working in. While this is the first reference I've been able to find of black employees at our head office, it's not possible to know from the surviving archive sources whether there may have been any black colleagues in our Baker Street office at an earlier date. With a business like M&S, we've had so many hundreds of thousands of employees over the years, and quite often it might be the case that a particular employee just isn't referenced in the staff magazines, but the Mercer twins are referenced here. I also found a follow-on reference to one of the twins. Jean, in her spare time, was obviously a keen singer, and in one of the fairly regular head office talent shows, she performed some songs. It also shows that she must have moved departments, because the earlier reference is that she's in the export department, and here she's working as part of the textiles department. Moving on to the retail side of the business and our teams in our stores, the earliest reference I can find to black colleagues in our store network is this reference to Diana Guillerman, who is a customer assistant at our Pantheon store in London. We have no image for Diana, unfortunately, but a reference to her as being part of the sales team there for nearly 3 years and that she had previously been in a beauty contest. The colleague magazines seem to have been obsessed with female colleagues being in beauty pageants, and I think we'll just have to accept that this is of its time. Another reference I found was to Carmen Handra Smith, who was part of the customer assistant team working at the Edmonton store. In this period, our stores were laid out with distinct islands for the different types of stock grouped together. All the ladies' skirts would have been grouped together, and Carmen would have had sole responsibility for serving customers in that area of merchandise. And it's a reference here to her winning the Miss Commonwealth title and her grand winnings for the prize. I also found this image in our Sparks staff magazine from Christmas 1966. It shows a group of employees at our Edgware Road store in London. And this group has been brought together because it's 15 members of staff, representative of 13 nationalities, but unfortunately only the staff manageress is named, so we don't know the details of the other colleagues shown in the image. Having seen some changes within the M&S workforce, what about how M&S has marketed its goods to customers? This is the first example I can find of black models appearing in one of our promotional campaigns. It's from a bespoke local marketing campaign in British Guiana in 1965, and it appears that the store owner felt that reshooting promotional images using models taken from their local store would be more relevant to their local customers than using the publicity pictures that had been provided from our sales team at head office in London. It's not particularly unusual at M&S for colleagues to be asked to model in this way. We've got examples from lingerie press shows from the late 1940s in London featuring M&S employees showing the latest designs, so that in itself is not particularly unusual. But it's interesting that this appears to be the earliest example of black models showcasing M&S fashions. And this is the first campaign that I've been able to find that features a black model in a mainstream M&S marketing campaign. It was part of a promotional campaign in spring of 1969 called Fiesta Fling, and it features a range of our young St. Michael fashions, so quite a lot of mini dresses, bright patterns and bold colours, and it was partly shot on location in Bermuda. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any information about this particular model. That's not unusual. The archive collection rarely has anything about models used in a particular campaign unless it's a very high-profile celebrity model. But we'd love to know more about this particular model. As well as the young St. Michael fashions, the campaign features some best-selling M&S product ranges, knitwear and rainwear. I had to go a little bit later to find the first example of a male black model featuring in a mainstream campaign, and these images are from a shoot from December of 1974 that featured in our in-house St. Michael News publication. It was a preview of the fashions that customers could look forward to in 1975, and as you'll see, there's a whole range of interesting looks featured as part of this campaign. The idea was very much around spies and espionage and intrigue, hence the recording equipment that you can see in some of the images here. But obviously, by the end of the photo shoot, all of the spies were the best of friends and going out for a night on the town together. Staying in the 1970s and going back to the idea of amateur models, which is something that happened quite a lot within M&S. And this is the first reference I can find to a black colleague being part of the modelling team that toured the country as part of our St. Michael Fashion Extravaganza catwalk shows. Pauline Bryan, or Vicky Bryan as she was more widely known, was a sales assistant at our Brixton Road store, and she had been part of the amateur modelling group for a couple of seasons, according to the first reference that I found in the August of 1971. Then, a little bit later, I found a reference to her meeting the Duchess of Kent, and Vicky was one of the models who met the VIP after the fashion show. Another opportunity for female employees within M&S was Miss Sparks. Miss Sparks was an annually appointed beauty queen and goodwill ambassador for the M&S brand. Miss Sparks was selected from within the company's employees and served for a year, spearheading the business's charity campaigns for that year and quite often appearing at high-profile M&S events and in staff magazines and newsletters. Miss Sparks began in the mid-1960s. We know that M&S had various beauty pageants for employees before that time, but it was called Miss Sparks from the mid-60s onwards. And in 1974, Kathy Alexis became the first black Miss Sparks. By day, she was the deputy supervisor on the menswear department at our Wembley store, while in her role as Miss Sparks, she led a campaign to support the NSPCC. Over the course of her year as Miss Sparks, Kathy featured in quite a lot of high-profile events for M&S, including meeting Princess Anne at one of our fashion shows. An image on the right is showing Kathy meeting the Lord Mayor of London as part of a special NSPCC function. So there's a range of different duties as a goodwill ambassador and charity campaigner for Miss Sparks, and colleagues tended to view it as something quite exciting to do for a year. The archive collection also includes stories of black colleagues who were superstars beyond M&S. Janice Hoyt, originally from Barbados, joined M&S when she was 17 and worked in the exports department at our Baker Street head office, focusing on exports to Canada. She sang at several M&S staff social events and was supported by the business in her singing career, including a charity album that M&S funded and produced in late 1973 titled I'm a Winner when Janice was 22. Janice appeared on TV show New Faces and went on to a successful recording career, both as a solo artist and providing vocals on records by Pete Townsend, Heaven 17, Misha Paris, and on Paul Hardcastle's 1985 hit single 19. Janice also became a familiar face on TV, including becoming the first West Indian quiz show hostess on British television in 1978 as Alan Taylor's sidekick on HTV's version of Mr. and Mrs. Just returning to the timeline that we looked at earlier, I thought it would be helpful to show some of the M&S milestones and references that we've been able to find so far in our research and put that in context. As you'll see, developments at M&S were broadly in line with what was happening generally in the UK at the time. However, there was never a colour bar at M&S in terms of recruitment or advancement opportunities for black employees. Today at M&S, we understand how important it is to respect, value and celebrate our differences, and we work hard to ensure everyone who works and shops with us feels represented and included. We're committed to reaching at least 15% ethnic minority representation in our senior management. We were the first national retailer to support the 10,000 Black Interns initiative, which aims to tackle the underrepresentation of black talent. And we've built on the success of this through our own early careers programs that focus on recruiting and developing diverse talent. And that brings us to the end of this short talk. I hope that's been of interest. It really is just scratching the surface, and the archive collection is accessible for researchers to come and conduct research to help M&S's Black history to be better known and celebrated. Thank you.